Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Daily Night. I am Brian Smith, your host, and I'm also the publisher at Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. Today's episode is going to discuss how and if UCF football can recruit consistently against the SEC. Sure, they can get one player here or there, but can they do it over and over again to help elevate the program? That is the question for today's podcast. With that, I have a few key points based on experience in covering recruiting over 20 years and some of the things that are going on with college football. Yes, it's subjective on my part to a certain degree, but there are some interesting points about it as well. I'm going to combine the two, and you can certainly comment or do whatever you want on my YouTube page, Twitter, etc. Happy to answer questions and discuss in a fitting way. With that, the first thing I want to talk about in establishing the ability to recruit against the SEC and just using it as a barometer overall, number one, you better be in a situation where you're winning games, meaning winning now. And that's something UCF's been pretty successful with in recent years. I've got their history pulled up over here on my other page. Just going to kind of read off things just as a jogging of the memory, if you will. So just going to start with 2010 and just move forward. So looking at it just from a glance, there are 6 seasons at UCF since 2010 has double-digit wins. That's a good start. That's a really good start. On top of that, they were in Conference USA in 2010, 11, and 12. Then they moved into the American, which they currently reside in. And, of course, they'll be moving on to the Big 12 fairly soon as well. So, as they say in the Jeffersons, moving on up, this is a very interesting situation because now you can also sell the Big 12. That's kind of the obvious. I'm not even going to go into that very much. Moving up to Power 5 status by itself is its own entity. It's its own podcast. It obviously helps. With that, I'm just talking about where they're at now. I want to make that very clear. This is a very specific distinction. The Big 12 will elevate when it really happens, and they can use it some now too, but I don't think it's quite the same as already being there and being established as a team that's played on national TV in conference championship games that ESPN and ABC were really trying to focus on, like the SEC title game is. It's just not the same, but it's coming. Once they are in the Big 12, that'll be a huge boost to UCF football and football recruiting. So looking at this, they're 11-3 in 2010, 5-7 in 2011, had a little letdown. Then 2 really good years in 12 and 13. They went 10-4, then 12-1. Then they went 9-4 in 2014. Obviously, the bottom completely fell out in 2015. Didn't win a game, 0-12. Year later, came close to going 500, goes 6-7, and then the 13-0 season in 2017, then 12-1 in 2018, 10-3, 6-4, and the Knights are currently 2-1 here in the 2021 season. What can UCF do to elevate from that point? How do they recruit against the SEC? It's kind of like the chicken and the egg. You can't beat them without the players, but the players want to see you win big games, and a lot of those teams won't play UCF. There's a lot of really interesting parts that don't match very well for what UCF wants short term. That doesn't mean long term. Give you an example. Keanis Thompson is committed to the Knights. He's a defensive end that plays at Lakeland. I think that he's a player that can be very good at UCF. He has a lot of upside. He's not a guy that is just tremendously underachieving or anything at the high school level despite his talent. He's a kid that plays hard on every down. He's a yes sir, no sir kid. He'll make an impact at UCF next year in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's against the run, maybe it's against the pass, whatever. He'll be in a package at the very least if he's not a guy that's in the rotation. Once you start getting a guy like that, he chose UCF before the Big 12 announcement. That's very important to note. Before. There's something going on with the coaching staff and all that. The facilities, the school itself, maybe he likes something academically. I've had the opportunity to speak with Keanis a few times. Great kid, but he's an introvert and he's pretty quiet. He just does what he does. He's not going to give you a whole lot of information. That's his choice, but he is a great example of you can do it even when you're not in a Power 5 school. That's proof. The Kai Martinez, cornerback, Apopka High School. He had offers from a lot of programs. That's another guy that could have played in the Southeastern Conference, decided to go to UCF. These are the kind of building blocks that when we look back on this 5 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, will be very important. UCF is not in a position to just skip over years. They need this foundation now and then add a few more in the class of 22, the class they're currently working on. And then UCF needs to get the guy. And that's something I'm going to that's a nugget I'm putting out there for towards the end of the podcast that I'll come back to. But they need the guy. Just use your own imagination for now. And to get to that guy, the following things need to happen. Kind of in general, you can get lucky. A kid just wants to go to UCF. That's a great player. There are situations like that happen. That's part of what happened with University of Miami when they got going in the late 70s to early 80s. They got Jim Kelly out of Pennsylvania. He was a pretty good player, but Penn State offered him as a linebacker, not as a quarterback. Obviously, Jim Kelly worked out. Sometimes things just happen, but follow with me here. If you're going to do well and attract these kids, you got to win. We just went over the record. UCF's headed on the right trajectory. Obviously, Mikey Keene's taken over at quarterback. They got Joey Gatewood's probably going to supplement him at the quarterback position. How they perform in helping UCF win games over the next 2 months is humongous for recruiting this year and in the future, because fair or not, recruits look at who won. It's black and white. Checkbox yay, checkbox no. If UCF is not winning, even though it's a backup quarterback, it's going to hinder recruiting. I guarantee it. It may not be a death knell by any means, but it's important. They're 2-1, and they need to win 10 games this year in the regular season at minimum. I know that's not what you want to hear probably as a UCF fan, considering the quarterback situation. Too bad. That's recruiting. 16 and 17-year-olds, for many of you that are parents, how many of them make really good, defined, financial, rational, not emotional decisions? It's few and far between. That's why they're teenagers. They want glitz. They want glamour. They want guarantees. They want now. They want instant gratification. And that's the end of the conversation. Everybody out there that's laughing at what I just said because they know their own teenager, welcome to recruiting. That's still the same deal. In communicating with kids across the country for 20 plus years, I can tell you one thing. Each kid is different. What he will see through his lens may be a really big difference from yours. Keanis is a great perspective on that. He could have went to Florida or Alabama or Miami or something. Wanted to go to UCF, so he committed. John Garcia, director of recruiting for SI, went to his game Friday night. Asked him, hey, are you going to visit anywhere else? Nope, good with UCF. Okay, great. That's good news for UCF. But at the same time, we need more of those. He needs to be the norm. So to get there, this is kind of what I have mapped out. And this is my opinion. I'm not saying there's any definitive plan here. This is just Brian Smith saying, here's what the best plan is for UCF. Part of it's just you got to win games, and I'm kind of going over that. But there's got to be a few other little points to it, subpoints. Number one, how you win the games. Consistently winning games the way UCF has, I mean, the record still shows, but winning games when you always just outscore your opponent won't get it done. You have to be able to dominate physically with defense. If you look at college football right now, and I'm going to talk about this a little later this evening, I'm going to do a podcast with Jason Hamby, one of the guys that works for me here at Inside the Knights, and he'll probably be on this podcast some too. We're going to do another podcast about SEC and some of the things going on there. It's interesting that the top two programs right now in college football have completely separated from the rest of the pack. Oregon's somewhere in there, but Alabama and Georgia are way ahead of everybody. It's not even close. And the reason, it's up front. They are just completely dismantling anybody's attempt to run the ball, anybody's attempt to do, pass rushing. They can do anything they want. Florida gave Alabama some fits. They're schemed up, but that's another SEC school, another tradition team. Alabama struggled with Florida in the second half. They didn't play well, and Florida almost came back and beat them. I think they're the third or fourth best team. in my opinion, 3 out of the top 4 teams are in the Southeastern Conference. I know the people in the college football playoff don't like hearing that because they know the TV sets won't turn on up north in New York and Chicago if that's what happens. But 3 of the 4 best teams are in the SEC. They're not going to rank them that way. They'll do everything they can not to even have 2 teams from a conference because they want balance for TV sets. They won't admit that, but it's still true. The bottom line, those teams went up front with elite recruiting at defensive line. That's where it starts. 4 and 5 stars across the board, first team and second team. Straightforward, down the hatch, that's the way it is. If you want to research it, go ahead. I've done it for years. I don't know how many charts I've done for myself and put into articles on different sites. It's a lot. I can tell you this much. You're not going to find a unit in the top 3 or 4 teams in the SEC in any given year that isn't elite recruiting across the defensive line. Here's the catch. There aren't many of them. They don't go far from home as a general rule. It's gotten a little better in the last 5 years with guys leaving their home state or going to more than one state away. And they traditionally go to just that, tradition-rich schools. D linemen are the most consistent of any position on just staying the course. No idea why. D end or D tackle. It's just the way it is. UCF needs to up their game there. Thompson is a great player, but he's one. You need 3 of those guys at minimum each and every recruiting class. Gus Malzahn knows that. He coached at Auburn. That's the objective. Right now, there are some guys that are in on D tackle, D end around the country. I need to see the visits. I'm not writing anything about recruiting right now, really. I was talking to Garcia about this, and I'm like, they're kind of in between. They don't have any visits that I know of. They might have some guys coming up for a game here or something pretty soon, maybe the East Carolina game. But they'll probably have some kids in right after the season based on Gus's history. They'll have a banquet or whatever. We'll see how many they have, but they need another elite defensive lineman in this class, if not 2, preferably. And I mean elite, not a projection guy, etc. Can play right away. That's how you get there. To do that, winning, and the guys that are currently on the field have to start playing better, and they got to start getting sacks. They have 1 sack in 3 games. Remember me mentioning the part about UCF having to win games and not win shootouts? Well, part of that's getting sacks. You knock the quarterback on his butt and he still has the ball, I guarantee you they'll score fewer points. That's why sacks are so valuable. I mean, it just changes momentum. It changes mindset. It changes play calling. It changes everything. You want to beat the crap out of the team you're playing? Sack the quarterback. Obviously, it sounds easy. You need to have really good players and really good scheme and a little luck too. But UCF has let literally and figuratively too many sacks slip through their fingers this year. That's 1. And 2, on the other side of that, beyond D-line, what's the other position that I harp on all the time? Corner. This is by far UCF's biggest bugaboo in recruiting and production and the way players are playing. They got to play better. They've done okay at times, but they've given up too many critical short passes, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 3, and then they give up at least a couple of chunk plays every game so far this year. The guy just flat got beat. Could be a linebacker, could be a corner, could be a safety or something underneath. Maybe there's, coverage is complex. Bryson Armstrong's gotten beat a couple of times deep. He's a linebacker. He's not really a DB. That also needs to be cleaned up. These kids are going to look at that and they're going to say, I'm not sure about that. That has to go away. And they're playing Navy this next weekend. Most people are going to say, well, Navy doesn't throw the ball. And they really don't. But they're going to take a couple of shots during that game. And schematically, they are horrific to prepare for. It's the worst team, literally. Number 1 on the board to be embarrassed by in the passing game in college football because they'll throw 2 to 5 passes, but they're off play action. And it's heavy run action because they run option. It's the most awful offense to watch. I hate it. But it works, and it's tried and true. Navy's not changing because they can't get the athletes to run what UCF does. They just can't. So they got to scheme you to death. And their coaching staff does a good job. If they can't stop a few of those big passes and they get beat, it's going to hinder UCF. I kind of want to throw that in there. To win the recruits, you got to win games like this, and you have to physically beat the bejesus out of them. Navy had a game earlier this year. They didn't run for 100 yards. In a weird deal, they fired their coordinator, but he's back on the staff already in some capacity. I don't know what the deal is. So there's some turmoil with the Navy midshipmen, UCF needs to take advantage and bludgeon them. The thing that UCF traditionally does the best this year is stop the run. Although against Louisville, they struggled with Malik Cunningham. So I'm not sure where they are. Is it a scheme thing? Was it an off night? Whatever. Obviously, they had some injuries. We need to find out what's going on with Ricky Barber and all these guys. And I know UCF is not going to give us all the information, but this game is huge because winning now to get SEC level recruits is a very big deal. If they lose that game, I'm very concerned about the class of 22. Can't lose to Navy from a perception perspective. Again, we know as fans and as people that cover, I cover UCF. I know what's going on with the program in general. They have a lot of promise. You're talking about 16 to 18-year-old kids. Rational decisions is not what that group is made up of. It is about emotional. Now, I want this. I want that. I want glitz and glamour. Why aren't you winning now? They don't look at things big picture. That's just teenagers. Again, you can say that a million times. It'll be true every time. It happens in recruiting too. Projecting your program is very, very difficult. It's an art. It's not a science because it changes with each kid. So that they come out and they beat Navy, let's say 38-17, just throwing a rational score out there, it's going to impact how they look at this. Hey, they just beat Navy by 3 touchdowns. Coach T. Will's telling me about, hey, how I could be one of the next D linemen like Kalia, like Big Cat, or whatever it is. And they did something. That message doesn't work so well from T. Will if they lose the game or it's really close and they struggle with Navy and they run for 260. Navy's offense is a grind to prepare for. Everything that you do against a team like Boise, for instance, and especially against Bethune, who didn't even try to run the ball, is worthless. It's actually counterproductive. That's how hard it is to prepare for Navy's triple option attack. I'm not going to go into it because it is literally hours of conversation on how it works. I have no interest. I hate that offense, but I can guarantee you T. Will and that group hate it more because they have to reteach everything for one game and then move forward. Nobody wants to play Navy. They're not going to say that publicly because it's part of our military and all that. It's awful to play their defense or their offense. It's just awful because it's such a difficult offense to prepare for because nobody else runs anything like it. It is annoying. That's the task. You're in the American Conference. You signed up for it. Here you go. So we'll see what they can do. I have no idea what to expect in this game. Every game I predict this year, this will be 10 times harder than any other. Just a little pre-note for my game prediction this weekend. You got a starting quarterback that's never started a college game that's a freshman, and you're going up against a triple option attack who's in disarray. Besides that, it's really easy. With that, I think UCF is going to win at least 9 games still this season. The Cincinnati game's obviously going to be really difficult, but besides Cincinnati, barring them just laying an egg defensively, I think I'm probably way different. And I have an article coming out about this later this morning. Mikey Keene's high school coach and I had a conversation pretty long and detailed about what he does, what he doesn't, a lot of technical stuff. And I'm going to transcribe it and put it into an article this morning. He is going to light up college football, in my opinion, in a way that most people just can't imagine without seeing him. But again, I had some insight with the coach, and I can only put that into perspective so much with his words, tone, the timing, the way he said it. I have a lot of confidence in this man. He's a very good coach. Chandler, Arizona is where he's at. It's basically Phoenix, and that's a great program, and they can produce quarterbacks. He knows how to coach QBs. He's very confident in Mikey, and Mikey didn't lose a game in 2 years. They won state championship. They know what they're doing. Bottom line, he's going to do some good things. So they're still going to score, but I'm still worried more about the defense. They need that extra oomph. Corner's got to play better, and Thornton. We don't know what's going on with Corey either. I as goofy as this may sound, I don't care what Gus or anybody says in a press conference. I've learned long ago, injuries are iffy, and what coaches say about injuries so they don't give away anything to their opponent, more iffy. I've lost track of how many times I've had a coach in some way, shape, or form mislead the media and or the public. So with that, here's the best part about why UCF, in my opinion, will recruit with the SEC long term. This year, I'm a little goofy about saying it because of the quarterback situation and everything. There's just too many injuries, too many goofy things going on. I don't know. Long term, I will double down on yes. The facilities are getting better. I'm getting ready to talk about that. But the first thing is this. The administration has bought in. They went and paid for Gus. They went and paid for the staff. They did some adjustments to the facilities already, and they've got a lot of plans. I already know that from some private conversations and some of the things that are out. The facilities are going to change, and that is a huge deal, more than ever. Just to give you an example of what UCF is competing against, and this is even by SEC standards, ridiculous. Georgia is going to have a 165,000 square foot facility. Say that out loud one more time. 165,000 square foot facility. They're just finishing up phase 1. Phase 2 is expected to be done early 2022. The cost is pretty cheap, actually. Only $80 million. Yeah, $80 million. When your facilities are going to be better than Clemson's or Alabama's or Notre Dame's or Texas or A&M or whatever, good night. That's what they're doing. I've seen some photos. I've had the opportunity to talk to Caven Call, one of UCF's top recruits in 23, who they're recruiting with Georgia. It's one of those two. And right now, Georgia leads. The reason? That facility. That's the last time I talked to Caven, there was no doubt Georgia was top on his board. He likes UCF a lot, but that's a big deal. I get it. He's an Apopka kid, plays with Nakai. Great kid. These kinds of things are important. So UCF, I'm sure they're going to, Gus and the entire staff, they're great guys. They're great recruiters. They're very honest, straightforward about things. Love the staff, but they're not selling the same thing that the SEC schools are. So you got to come up with different things. And one of those key points and why the administration went out and spent the money, why they did it, is stability. Another key selling point for any college football program, your ability to sell yourself and your staff. I'm going to take care of your kid. That's what you say to the parent. As the player, you say, this is how we can develop you, make you a better man, give you a good education. UCF's a very good school. And, of course, we're going to try and do our best to prepare you for this thing called the National Football League. Those are the things. How do you find a way and make that better? There's little nuances with each kid. But education, making sure they're safe, giving them an opportunity at a great college experience, all those things UCF can provide. The coaching to get them to the NFL. Gus has a lot of kids that he's put in the NFL. T. Will, different guys on the staff came from Auburn in different places. Coach Hand's been a tremendous O-line coach. It won't be hard to recruit offensive linemen, in my opinion. They've got some things going for them there that most schools in Group of 5 are not even sniffing. That's a big point. But it's that stability because, I've been around and I'm telling you, these guys like where they're at. Every 5 seconds, it seems like I see an article. I've got a special thing on Google, anything Gus Malzahn, it comes to my inbox and I read articles and, just get a judgment of what other people think. Gus Malzahn for this job, Gus Malzahn for Florida State and all that. He ain't going nowhere. He's bought into UCF and his wife, Christy, same way. That's just my opinion. I've spoken to both of them, been around Gus and just watched his body language, his demeanor, how him and his staff work together. He digs it here. He likes Orlando. And he wants to change the culture of college football and show you don't have to just be at Auburn or you have to be at LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, USC, whatever it is. Things have changed, especially with the transfer portal. That's the other part of recruiting where UCF is totally different now. There needs to be a separate recruiting ranking on who won the transfer recruiting wars. That's something I'm going to write about in December after we get a better idea who's leaving. We need to find out. There's a ton of kids in the transfer portal. A lot of them, unfortunately for them, aren't finding a home in D1. But UCF's going to find some of them. And there's kids right now that are probably talking to UCF or some other school through some sub point, a parent or a friend or a high school coach. Hey, this kid might transfer. Just so you know, Coach so-and-so, Tennessee, at Notre Dame, at UCF, whatever. That's how it works. I know the NCAA doesn't like talking like that, but that's exactly how it works. There's an intermediary. in a lot of these situations. They're going to win on some of those, and that's part of recruiting. It's not just high school kids. You have to recruit against the SEC for transfer portal kids too, and UCF's done a heck of a job with that. It's tremendous. Big Cat could have went to Tennessee or anywhere else. Chose UCF. With that, the other thing I want to mention, and it kind of relates to what Georgia did, I don't know the inner workings of what UCF's long-term plan is for their facilities, but it comes back to Gus and it comes back to Terry and all the people in the athletic department. They've done a great job so far. I want to see a literal, detailed for every room of what they're doing with the facilities before I comment much more. I know that's not necessarily feasible right now. There are a lot of things still being worked out, but until I see that, I don't have an opinion. I don't like projecting based on a guess. That's stupid. So I don't know what Georgia's is either, but if they're spending $80 million, that much I do know, and that's a lot of money. They're going to be pretty good. I've seen some photos and some basic stuff they've got done. UCF hasn't even really broke ground on what they're doing. They're going to improve the stadium and stuff. I get it. I want detail, like every square inch. This is what it's going to look like. And they'll have a rendering at some point. Not yet, but they got some overviews and things you can look at online, and they've done a good job. I want that next level thing before I get too much into it. But whatever that is also important. They're going to show it to recruits. If you're going to sell it and get SEC level recruits from DB and corner, and those, just in general, there's nickel corner, free safety, strong safety, field corner, all those guys. It's all in a real essence different positions, but it's the secondary, the defensive backs. If you're going to get those guys, and it's the hardest positions to recruit is secondary, because they're the most coveted. It's supply and demand. You better have some things drawn up, and they better be right. Whoever the artist is, that ain't got nothing to do with UCF. That's the architects and all that stuff better be point on, and it better be fun by the viewpoint of a 16-year-old. Good luck. I'm sure that is a nightmare. It still is what it is. I talk to too many kids that want to see the facilities. They want to see pictures because when they go to Florida State, they've got stuff coming up. Miami's kind of redone some things. Miami's done a nice job with their facilities, considering their limited space. They're really landlocked right where they are. But if you don't do that, you're going to have a struggle. Just something to think about. With that being said, here's the other thing that just to give you an idea of what these offices, what the weight rooms and all that are about. The word that's used all the time now, every time builds a facility at Notre Dame, at Texas, whatever, player lounge. What is this? This is where the players go to literally lounge around, kind of hang out and build team bonding. I don't know if I would have liked that. I don't know if I would have wanted that, but it's a big deal. That's something that I hear players talk about. There's a nutrition area. I've seen the one at Alabama. They did a show on it. Alabama does a tremendous job of how it's organized. UCF needs to have something like that. That's competing with the SEC. And part of it's just being copycat. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Ours is like Alabama's. You say that, that's going to attract a recruit. Why? They've won, how many national titles? Like 6 in 12 years or something like that? Forget what the number is. It's ridiculous. 6 and 14. It's crazy. You need to do some of those things. They know it. We need to see it too. Final point about the facilities. The office where Gus is now, Gus Malzahn's office, it's a nice, as soon as you walk in, it's right there. It's very convenient. I'm curious to see if they move it around. They do anything else that catches the attention of recruits. That's important. The final thing comes back around to what I started with record. They need to have a moment. UCF fans will point to what they call the 2017 national title. Well, I can tell you flat out that I have never heard a recruit say UCF national champion in 2017, ever. How they view it and how many UCF fans from that team view it are polar opposite. Fair or not, that's just fact. Not one single kid. They need another moment. It doesn't have to be an undefeated season, but they have to beat another team with Gus as the head coach. Gus Malzahn being the man on the sideline. That gives the recruits that are on the fence about whether or not I should jump over to UCF, who's going into the Power 5, but not there yet. What are they doing to prove to me, based on the eye test, that I should go there? The Cincinnati game could be it. It could be a bowl game. It could be the way they whip Navy. It's really subjective, and there's no limit. But you got to have a starting point, and there is some name recognition. Like you beat Navy 31-10, it's still Navy. If they go to a major bowl game this year, and we got a lot of football to go to, does Dylan come back? Well, I have no idea. Just total projection. If they go out and they play the major bowl game, even if, like yesterday, Clemson, I picked it, and I'm patting myself on the back for this one. They beat nobody yesterday but themselves. Clemson just finds ways. They totally un-Clemson-like in the last 5 years. They got beat by NC State in overtime, and it should have been before that. The kicker missed one in regulation, maybe two, I believe, or NC State would have won straight up. That is a very unique situation. Maybe they play Clemson. Now, Clemson's not great, but the name matters. If they played Clemson in a bowl game, that would be a huge deal. Clemson's offensive line is a sieve. It is pathetic. That offensive line coach stinks. Flat out. He stinks. They've gotten worse over the last few years. They got problems. They don't have Trevor Lawrence to clear things up, running read option and just making guys miss and outrunning guys down the field like he did against Ohio State a couple of years ago. He ain't there anymore. DJ ain't running around nobody, and they certainly don't have the same running back. They're not in the same situation. If you beat Clemson, as an example, that could be your moment. While UCF fans want to jump on that 217 bandwagon, you're more than welcome to do so. Beating Clemson will be tenfold more important to recruits. Guarantee it. Name recognition. You got to beat one of the ones that aren't easy to beat. That's how you climb into the top. Be the underdog. You want to be the underdog? Okay, go beat them. They've done it before. They beat Gus. When he was at Auburn, they had a heck of a season. They beat Auburn. They competed with LSU pretty good a few years ago. They lost, but they competed with them. They need another moment like that. Beat an ACC school like Clemson. Beat a Big Ten school like Iowa or Ohio State. In my opinion, those are the two best. Maybe it's Michigan. Michigan's goofy. They had a great start then yesterday. They didn't play very well. We'll see. I haven't figured them out yet. They're the kind of the wild card in college football. They need to beat a name, tradition-rich school at the end of this season. That is bottom line. That would be the height to finish off this season. And this is I'm not saying it's a news flash, but for recruits, this is one thing I will argue with anybody on the planet. I don't care who it is about what recruits want. I can tell you right now, that's what they want to see. You can't project that. Did you or did you not beat that team? Did you not beat Michigan? Well, why didn't you? That'll put pause in it. Why didn't you beat Texas? Or why didn't you beat Clemson? Whatever game UCF plays in the bowl game, and I have zero idea what it's going to be right now, I can guarantee you this much. It will carry water with a 16 to 18-year-old. To get there, they got to win the Navy game first. I mean, that's what, each coach says, 1 week at a time. Well, there's truth in that. But in the private meetings and private conversations they have with media, I guarantee you they're going to say, yeah, we know we got to win the bowl game. What you say publicly, what you say privately are not the same. UCF needs to kick the crap out of Navy and some other teams. Do so with some defensive influence because they need more defensive recruits. That's why I keep bringing that up. Got to get more D-line and really got to get more corners. Now, this class, no exceptions. T. Will would tell you the same thing if he was standing in front of any person who listens to this podcast. Guarantee it. You got to throw waves of players at teams to win and be a top 10 team. Waves. Defense can still win you big games. If you don't believe me, look at yesterday's college football. Offenses this year are a little off, and I talked to a couple of people about it last night, Jason Hamby and John Garcia. It's one of the weirder days in college football over the last 5 years. There's usually one shake-up Saturday. Yesterday was a great example. Notre Dame's offense is a travesty. It stinks. They also created 5 turnovers, 2 pick sixes, and had a kickoff return for a touchdown and still won by 4 touchdowns against Wisconsin. You can do it in weird ways. That doesn't mean they're going to win the national title. They're not. But that's a start. If you've got great defense and a lot of speed on kickoff return, you can be competitive. That's one thing UCF can do. They've got athletes. Go ahead, kick the ball to Jalen or Ryan or anybody like that. Go ahead and kick it to Johnny Richardson. I'm happy to watch that as a UCF fan and as somebody that works in the booth. I'm happy as a media member of UCF to watch that. That's fun for me to write about and just to watch and enjoy. You can win that way. I'm good with it against Navy or anybody because it's going to help this season and recruiting. but they also need to do that at corner and D-line. D-line's not doing their job well enough yet. Corners up and down. They have one pick. Mr. Lester is a heck of a football player. They've moved him to safety. He still might be their best corner. I don't know. He plays the ball very well. Quadric Bullard, Devad, those guys. Safety is a little better situation. The corner's got injury, and they haven't had a guy step up and be the guy. They got to have the guy. Somebody needs to do that, and that's the thing. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. But yes, UCF can recruit with the SEC, but they've got to prove it on the field. That's really the final answer. It's not an easy one. It's not a fun one. It's not anything other than bottom line. You want to get those kids, you got to beat teams that already have some of them, even though you don't have as many SEC level recruits as they do. Is it fair? No. Is it intriguing? Abso-freaking-lutely. UCF is right there. They're on the cusp of being that unusual program, much like Miami was in the 70s and early 80s, literally. Because UCF has figured out offense. I mean, Coach Hand, I can tell you right now, is one of the best offensive line coaches in college football. The offense has got quarterbacks. They've got skill guys that can run around you. They got to get the defense going and have that signature win. The coaching staff, the administration, the facilities are coming, and the conference affiliation with the Big 12 makes the Power 5 very soon. All of those things are in place. Got to get that defense going. Got to smash a few teams the rest of the season. Hell or high water, Mikey Keene or not, you got to do it anyway. You want those kids? You got to go out and beat the bejesus out of teams the rest of the way. And I know that Gus Malzahn isn't going to talk like that in a press conference. What I say and he said are totally different animals. But he knows it too. He's an extremely intelligent man. He's going to find a way to do anything he can to put his guys in a position to win anyhow. But I think they're going to try to score a little more than normal the rest of the way, just to kind of prove a point. He can coach quarterbacks. He's proven that. And he's going to have a chance with Mikey starting this coming Saturday against Navy. It's a very big part of recruiting against the SEC. Even with our backup, this is who we are. You don't believe us? Look at the scoreboard. That's going to be the message. So with that, a couple of things before I get out of here. Going to have a story up about the entire experience with the Lake City, Columbia playing against Trinity Christian from Jacksonville today. That's going to be later this afternoon. It's a bigger article talking about the culture. It's something that I find fascinating with high school football. That's going to be up. And I'm also going to do, like I said earlier, a piece with Mikey Keene and his head coach from high school, not Gus, but his head coach from high school, talking about who he is as a player, what we can expect against Navy. Those are a couple of things coming up at Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. For everybody out there, have a great day. Be safe and God bless.